let's jump straight into this and flash past the armature stage because it's always ugly, and I experimented a little as always by using some hot glue to help hold the wire together, knowing it would obviously go up again in the oven for the bake. It didn't do any harm, but it's really an unnecessary step to make. It could seep out if you have any holes or gaps, so I wouldn't recommend it. Just use wire or masking tape to hold your armature together. And this is my first attempt at sculpting a muscular body, and I'll be honest, I completely overthought the process at the start because I was so focused on trying to get the proportions correct. But as I started building confidence, I started using more conventional sculpting methods to bulk him out. And even though his arms are going to be made to look like they're covered in hair later, I still wanted to sculpt all the definition in there so he still looks mega jacked. Now you see there that I only bulked out his legs with grey Sculpey to round about the knee area. Well, that's because when I designed him, he is standing in tall grass just like the game Duck Hunt, where the dog comes up with the ducks you shot. And I thought I wouldn't need to sculpt the bottom half of his legs because they would be hidden by the grass. But it wouldn't have looked right, so I do end up adding more clay later on. But this did help with positioning the lower part of the leg better, so it was a happy little accident. Now half of sculpting is envisioning what the end piece looks like, and that's where you have to trust yourself. He really started looking top heavy at this stage, but once the core muscles start being laid down, it brings everything back in line. But I did have to redo his abs. I was thinking his belt was going to cover the lower part of his abs, but that was way too low. So I do end up giving him a proper six-pack shortly. I didn't use a reference for the muscles. I pretty much just went from memory of a previous life I had before having kids. So they may not be completely accurate, just like my memory. Time to bulk out the lower legs before slapping some cheeks on and filling out the bottom half to match the top. I've just mapped out some rough shapes for the leg muscles before laying down some chunks of clay in an exaggerated fashion to fit him out because Wolverine is super jacked, but also well known for being a short ass. So having giant quads and hammies helps depict the angry little man syndrome he suffers from. And this is where I decided to give him the hero pants. Again, it's a small change from the original design, but it makes it more retro. But I started regretting it because it made him look like he was carrying some junk in the trunk. Or a full diaper, if we're being completely honest. But I shaved a little clay off, and once I start working on the boots, it will look better. But first, his 8-bit Nintendo pad belt buckle. I baked it at this stage and pushed it into a flat bit of Sculpey, took it off, scraped the guts out of the section I didn't need and pushed the pad back in so I could cut nice straight edges around the controller to give it that unmistakable classic Nintendo design finish. And now it's baked again, it's ready to attach to his belt. I still wasn't happy with his thighs at this point, especially his left side, but I was still committed to the process and wanted to see how it looked once his calves are bulked out and boots are on. and they make all the difference. Hands. Not my favourite thing to sculpt, but I'm still trying to find my way of doing them. But these came out alright. It helps that they are clenched fists, but nonetheless, the least you have to add on and blend, the better in my opinion. But this was my second attempt at them. The first time I added each finger individually, and I didn't like it. They felt weak, so I scrapped them and done them this way, which is less work and more of a solid feel when you're just having to add a thumb. Just poking in some claw rolls now before the hands are baked, and then we'll head down to the workshop to forge his claws in fire. These were just 1.5" brad nails flattened out. You don't really need to heat them up to flatten them, but it helps to keep the surface smoother and looks cool, so why not? If I was a moth, I'd be a dead one, burnt to a crisp. Now just to straighten them back out a little, and they are good to glue onto the hands. As I was making the claws, I gave the body a bake so I don't lose any detail as I lay some rolled out clay to finish off his hero suit. You notice that you don't need to cover it all with a whole new layer. Just some thin strips around the arms and blended into the rest of the body is all that's needed, and it turns him from looking shirtless to having clothes on with just a small amount of clay. Now for his shoulder pads, using some bacon bond to make sure they stay put. And a thin layer of Sculpting on the back of the hands now the glue is set, just for added strength and to finish off the glove before putting the hands in place. Now it's time for the most important part, the head. I feel like there is always a make or break point in every project, and this was definitely that point. Nerves were jangling, procrastinating was at peak levels, but it was at this point where something started looking familiar. And I thought to myself as I was mapping out his face that this reminds me of a toy I used to have as a kid that I absolutely loved. Dust Brain. My Madballs figure that had a button on his back that fired his head off like a cannonball. I loved this figure, and man I wish I still had it. Especially after it made me look it up on eBay and realise it's now worth a small fortune. But that's kind of the essence of this channel. It's already churning up other nostalgic memories that I haven't given a thought for many years, just by making up a project of other memories and things that shaped my childhood, and that's what I hold dear. I love that feeling. But anyway, I digress. It was at this stage where I started to panic a little, because it was beginning to look more like an alpaca rather than a wolverhound. And I don't have anything against alpacas per se, but it's not the look I'm trying to achieve. But let's see if we can bring it back a bit with Wolverine's mask wings, or flaps, whatever they are. I'm using some window screen mesh between two rolled out bits of Sculpting, cut to shape to act as a support for the wings so they don't sag during the final bake. There we go, that should stop them flapping in the wind. A little bit of blending in and that's already back on track. Now I just need to shape the mouth a little more to give him more of a growling, snarling kind of appearance because he's always angry. And then we can start working on some jowls and wrinkles to really pull that snarl out. Now I didn't use a reference for the muscles, but I sure did need one for the dog's nose. this is probably one of the key features that really starts to make it look like a dog, so it needed to be right. Time to commit and secure his head to the body. Confidence must be growing. And now to fit out the rest of his face and add some more clay to the top of the head and start bringing in final features of his face and mask. These are the smallest teeth I've ever made. A bit fiddly and end up being a little crooked, but that's alright. We can just say he's an English hound. And like all hounds, he needs a tail. So let's get that done and move on to the 8-bit ducks. Now I skipped through the making process of the ducks because I showed it in the previous video with the first half of this diorama dead guy. So if you want to see that, then I'll leave a link in the description below to go check that out. I had a tiny bit of primer left in a rattle can, so I covered as much as I possibly could and then just brushed over everything with some watered down matte black folk art acrylic paint. But I come to regret this later with the yellow paint. Painting is probably one of my weakest skills when it comes to this hobby. Well, that and making quality videos about it. But I'm working hard on both, so you'll be seeing effort and improvement in each video. I hope anyway. This has definitely been one of my better paint jobs with regards to attention to paint choice and dry brushing techniques, but I've got a long way to go before I call myself a pro. But I have a lot of projects in the pipeline that will definitely push me to reach for better results each time and learn more along the way with better quality videos. And you can help just by liking and subscribing and supporting me if you enjoy the builds I make. It means a lot and makes a difference and helps the channel grow. And that brings us to the finale. So as I fix these ducks in place, sit back and get ready for the glamour shots. I'm having a lot of fun with these Marvtendo characters. It opens the door up to endless possibilities, and I have a long list of future mashups. I'll give you a little hint for the next one. What do you get when you cross a mushroom with a jug of noughts? Answers on a postcard. And if you haven't already, then slap that like button, hit subscribe, and tickle that bell so you don't miss what's coming up. As always, thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.